Welcome to Tech Simplified, and my name is Sly Gittins, and I'm continuing the woman in tech. I got Tatiana Streeter, and she's going to share her story and how she continues to trailblaze and be a pioneer for women in technology. Tatiana, would you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Yes, thank you, Sly, first for inviting me to your show. I'm very grateful to be here and to share my story of how did I get to Microsoft and how am I in tech and what was my journey here. But my current position, so I'm currently a business program manager for industry solutions delivery sales. That's a long name, but that's what I do today. And my role is really centered around customer advocacy. So all of the great customer stories that we have for Microsoft customers, products, and services, my job is at the core of just capturing those internal processes and tools that capture those stories. So a lot of exciting work comes through my wheelhouse. But I will say just, getting to tech was an interesting journey. Definitely was not linear. Definitely was not a straight path here. I'll take it back to where I'm from. So I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. And when everyone says Miami, they think of a beach. They think of, all the lifestyle, South Beach, all that good stuff. But I grew up in this inner city community called Liberty City, which is where I was born and raised. Lived at my grandma's house, grew up with my cousins and my mom and my uncles, and we just had a packed house. But I always had big dreams of something, right? I didn't know it would be tech today, but I always had big dreams to change, the nature of my family and the nature of where, we could grow and where we could go. So my primary education was rooted in International Baccalaureate program. It was at a school in Little Havana. So that's where I kind of got my language kind of background. I learned Portuguese at that school when I was 5 years old, all the way up until about 14. So a lot of my childhood friends are actually Brazilian because that school had a bunch of Brazilians who were just fresh from Brazil, who came to Miami and wanted to be a part of that school. So that actually started framing my vision around the world, right? Because I had so many kids in my classroom that were from different places. And it made me feel like, okay, I come from this small little city in Miami, but there's a big, big world out there and I want to see what it's about. And then when I was in high school, I applied to this school called Mast Academy, which is a Maritime Architecture Science Technology Academy, long name. But didn't really see myself in STEM. My mom was just very big on education and going to a great school. And she knew all the school ratings in Florida and the district. And she saw that Mast Academy was, top of the list that year for schools, for high schoolers to join and things like that. It was a lottery selection of students who could get into the magnet program. So kind of competitive on the front end, but I was able to get into the school, stayed there for 2 years, learned a lot about STEM and the possibilities of STEM, and joined the robotics team and just got a little visual and a little vision of what STEM could be like for Tatiana. And then after I left Mast Academy, because it was on a remote island and it was far away from everything, because it was a Maritime Architecture Science Technology Academy, I went to high school in North Miami Beach, and I did this program that was jointed with Florida International University. So it was a dual enrollment program. There were business courses there. So I took 2 business courses. There was one around marketing, and there was one for business presentations. Very rudimentary, very foundational, the fundamental courses. But just being in the class with older FIU students, some were juniors, some were sophomores at the time. I was only a senior in high school. That was my spring semester that I took this course. I was like, okay, I think business is going to be the route that I take when I go to college. And it's actually interesting because, I worked in the Career Center when I was in college, so I'm familiar with people who are undecided in terms of majors, but I'm grateful that I got the experience that early on to see, okay, business is probably the route that I want to take. So I took that approach to my college tours and to all of the different college informational sessions that I went to, that, okay, I definitely want to go to a business school wherever I go. So let me kind of see where that could be, right? Yeah. Now, as it came to the college admittance and college process, my mom, she put a tip on my shoulder. She said, all of us went to HBCUs, right? And I mean, growing up in Florida, it was all about going to Florida state schools, right? Or just, the state schools, right? Like everything was about going to either FSU or UF or USF or UCF. So I was like, what's about this HBCU stuff, right? And my mom told me she went to Clark, and my grandfather went to Morehouse, my aunt went to Spelman. So I was like, okay, there seems to be this legacy thing that I might disrupt if I don't go to a HBCU.
Yeah.
I mean, in the nicest way possible. My mom was just like, look, you're gonna stop that if you don't go. So I'm like, all right, well, that's a big thing to stop. We're taking it all the way back to the early 1900s. Some of the my family that went to HBCU. So I was like, all right, let me see what HBCUs are out there. Let me see what schools I can go to. So I started that college tour specifically for HBCUs. Went to Spelman, went to Howard, went to Hampton. Fell in love with Hampton. So I actually went to Hampton in April of my senior year. And a lot of high school students know, like in Florida, that May 1st is like your committed day. So I felt like I was so late. I felt like I was at the end of my journey. You know, I was like, oh man, like I gotta pick a school tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like this is the last tour, mom. You know, we got to go back. We got to do pros and cons, figure this out. So I went to Hampton. I toured Hampton, went straight to the business school. That was like my first priority. The campus was beautiful, but I was like, okay, what does the business school have? Like, what's the curriculum? What does this school have to offer? And I remember doing a tour with the student recruitment team. It's called SRT. I actually ended up joining SRT when I joined Hampton as well, because I loved my tour. But I remember just hearing about the curriculum and the 5-year MBA program and business admin degrees. And I said, okay, I think Hampton is the right fit for me. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, I think this is my school. And she's like, yay, you know, because it was an HBCU. And, you know, it wasn't the HBCUs that my family went to. It was kind of, you know, doing my own lane in a way, but still, you know, carrying on the legacy of going to a HBCU. So, and I can say as a proud alumna, it was the best decision I've ever made, from classrooms to curriculum to my internships. It's really molded me into the professional that I am today. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That was a fantastic story. And the great thing is that it's still being written, right? And I like how you talked about, you know, just the different stages of your life, you know, growing up where you're from, and then get introduced to like different cultures, different religions, different foods, customs that open up your mind. One thing from being from Brooklyn, and I grew up in Bed-Stuy, it was similar. You know, my family's Caribbean, so I already knew things were big in America from Barbados. Then everyone I hung out with was other Caribbean folks, but then we had Pakistani folks, we had Spanish, we had from Puerto Rican, Dominican. You name it, it was in Brooklyn, right? And that also made me, you know, respect different things, open my mind, and helped me to look at things from different views. So I could tell how powerful for that. And kudos to your parents knowing about those different magnet programs that you can go to, and putting you in those areas so you can be competitive from the beginning, and also knowing when to make that pivot to give you a little bit more time to focus on school. So that was cool. And it's also, that goes into the next question. How can someone break into tech? Let's also talk about, you know, HBCUs and how someone from there can get into tech, because you came straight from college into tech and through the Aspire program here at Microsoft. Yes. So how did you how was that process? Can you kind of take us through that?
Yeah. So I would say, it was definitely not a linear process. Okay. And I think, you know, a lot of tech companies over the years have done a lot of improvements with recruitment for HBCUs. Yeah. The D&I space at Microsoft. So I know firsthand when I got here, recruiting was the first thing I wanted to help with, because it was a bit of a challenge to get here. I have to be fully transparent. So taking it back to my HBCU, Microsoft actually was a company that I would see come to the business school around my senior year. Prior to that, I was in the computer science club, the NSBE club. I would just go just to kind of, you know, find the synergies between business and technology, because I was very interested in that. At the time, there wasn't a club or a student organization that kind of gave a hybrid of both. It was like either you join NSBE or you join computer science club, or you're in the business school and you're in the business organizations. But I tried to be at least the liaison or kind of the bridge between both worlds, coming from the business side to those organizations, and you know, doing case competitions, innovation workshops. Those teams would have like computer science majors, business majors, things like that. So wherever I could find the synergies on campus, that's kind of how I, you know, framed my career visioning and planning around, okay, maybe I can do tech based off this experience, right? But a little bit about my internship experience. So my sophomore year, I did my first internship at KPMG Miami. as an internal audit. And it was actually a great experience, but I quickly learned that I don't want to work in Miami. So I was like, all right, let's go back to the table view of like my strategy for, career and things. I'm like, okay, Tatiana, okay, well, you're not working in Miami next year. That's number one, location. I was like, okay, next, let's try a new industry, right? Let's try something else, right? We did the big four, we did the big accounting firms. Let's see something else, right? So I tried consulting next. Worked with Accenture. Accenture had a lot of, Accenture Digital Interactive, a lot of technology webinars and technology seminars that I was able to attend while I was an intern. I was like, okay, seeing what Accenture does, with customers and things like that as a consultant. And it was actually very interesting. So I noticed I had a gravitation towards those webinars and things like that. But I'm like, is it the consultant role that I want? Is it the consultant kind of key role that I want coming into this space. So I had this brainstorming, and mind you, I'm only 21, 22 at the time. So I had this brainstorming and, through several conferences, and that's another thing, this kind of goes into what I think breaking into tech takes. I think going to conferences is very important. I prided myself on going to 15 conferences when I was in college, but I knew the power of network very early on, and I knew how important it was to go to career fairs, to go to just conferences that were hosted by companies. I mean, now there's more virtual kind of webinars, if you will, and virtual sessions where you can come in and ask day-to-days, responsibilities, roles, what are some of the opportunities. And I would just keep a log of everything. I went to several in different industries, financial services. I went to some in tech. I went to some that were just wide range, all industries, just everyone was there, startups, so I was able to kind of get a layout of what the market wants and what they need, and just talking to recruiters and talking to hiring managers, in person at these events. That was very helpful for me, especially as I was building my resume as a college student. What are some call outs, kind of going down. And I remember printing my resume on like this fancy paper and like just like kind of going, section by section, like what are some of the spotlights, what are some of the call outs, what are some of the highlights. And I definitely had a lot of mentorship and advisement, not only just from my career center, but from the folks that I would meet in those conferences. They would, give me their point of contact, later on, to kind of help me with timelines and the recruitment process. So that helped me a lot. I would also say LinkedIn was a great engine as well. I was very proactive on LinkedIn. I would meet someone, I would connect with them. I would send an introductory email, to recruiters. Like I would type in, companies of my interest, recruiter, and find the recruiter and just do my introductions. And really, as a college student, it was to really familiarize myself with timelines. I think that was the biggest piece, because I knew if I didn't, make it within a certain timeline, I might not make the opportunity. So that was a big thing for me, just familiarizing myself with timelines, programs, dates. And just having that log of that. So, the journey to Microsoft, I would say, was interesting. So as a senior, I really sat with this heavy uncertainty. 2020 was an interesting year, as we all know, with the pandemic and being a senior in college. It was just very, very uncertain for me. I had 2 internship experiences, but and with that, I was grateful, but I still was unsure about what is next for Tatiana. So I kind of sat down, did a lot of career mapping, next step planning with my career coaches and life coaches. I really utilized the Career Center at my university to do this, to see, okay, where could I go with what I have today, right? Could I go to grad school? Could I continue down the MBA path? Could I just go straight to corporate and then maybe, do the MBA after 2 years, a deferred program? There's so many opportunities. And I was like, I really struggled a lot in silence, I would say, with the uncertainty of not knowing what's next and what do I want to do. And then adding the pandemic to it just made it even worse. But I got the call from Microsoft in March. My interview process, I had about 5, 6 interviews because I was on the later cusp of the Aspire program. And it was interesting. Yeah. LinkedIn, I applied through a regular job link to Microsoft. It was not the Aspire program link. I actually did not know about the Aspire program because my university, I didn't have information of that through a recruiter or anything like that. So I just applied to a regular job link based off of my experience and the resume that I built. And I actually had a recruiter reach out to me, on LinkedIn and say, hey, have you ever considered the Aspire program? And I said, sure, tell me more. I would love to have a job in tech. So just, any resources to kind of learn about this Aspire program. So I saw a video on YouTube and I saw links, and she sent me a bunch of links, and I'm like, oh, this is great. From university to Microsoft, they kind of give you this 2-year kind of network support cohort to just help you transition to technology, into tech industry from undergraduate, tenure. So I said, okay, great. Sign me up for the Aspire program. So I went through the interview process, and just with my resume and interview prep and working on my resume, I would say that really helped me land the job today. So I would say for anyone who's trying to break into tech, LinkedIn Learning was a great engine. If you want to just learn more about program management, project management, I had the premium subscription when I was in college, just the trial subscription, because it is expensive when you're in college, but I know students get a little bit of a discount. So I did the LinkedIn Learning to just learn about skills. I would also say definitely just familiarizing yourself with timelines, and knowing, if LinkedIn is your route, just knowing how to work LinkedIn in your favor to kind of get, the opportunities that you want. I would also say just also going to those conferences, webinars, and those informational sessions to learn more about, what the company has to offer, program wise for you is also great. And I love that now this stuff is kind of broadcast publicly. I feel like before it was through your, institution or your school, but now I think if you keep abreast on, the company website, you can see where they're having events, and, you could subscribe and tune in and sign up and register. And it's pretty much, it's a lot easier and friction free, I would say now, than it was before. So that's a little bit about, breaking into tech, but.
Well, that was fantastic, Tatiana. You did a wonderful job at, I like to do checklists to help people out, right? So the first thing I heard was networking, whether that's networking in your college or networking external to like conferences, right? And doing that on a college student budget, because that's tough. But good thing, like you said, now with a hybrid environment, a lot of these conferences are free, or they have a free alternative now that you can do online. And you also said networking online using technology like platforms. So I know you talked about LinkedIn. I've seen people now use Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces. There's so many different ways that you can interact. Even TikTok even has some ways to interact that way.
TikTok is very, very informative. I use a lot of TikToks. Yeah.
See, there you go. Like I started realizing that you could use that for that, as well. So you also talked about self-reflection, right? You shared, like, you just spent a lot of time on where you wanted to go. You also did internships and found out what you didn't want to do. And I think sometimes that's the most powerful thing that can teach you, like, what don't you want to do? Because out of college, for me, I became a network engineer and I hated every bit of it. But telecommunication was my favorite class. So like, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, I'm supposed to like this, but I found out that I'd rather be with the people more than I like the tech. I still like tech. So then I found there's pre-sales engineering roles. I'm like, all right, I want to do that, because that still gives you my technical side. I still could talk about the telecommunication and those there, the networking, security, you name it, but I get to talk to people and do it, right? And that was the way I fit in. So I think that was pretty powerful, right? And then also is not only being limited by your resources in your college, you got to do some work on your own to go out there and find it. So I thought that was really well said. And I can let you know now, like, it's tough. Like, I never made it from college to a big tech company, right? I got a lot of rejection letters. Took me 10 years to get here. So if you brand new, Tatiana way works too. And if you are more seasoned in your career, you can also get into these big tech companies as well as being, they call it an industry hire, right? You have industry experience. I have experience in channel from my background. So they hired me for my industry knowledge. So then you could get in that way also. So if you don't get in early, that doesn't mean you can't get in early. And if you think you can't get in from college, you might take a little bit more finessing if you're not a college where they come to. I went to the University of Buffalo. Again, it ain't the most start off company, but we did have one person make it into Google, right? So we had like, had an interview and all that stuff that broke in. You just need that one person to get you there, right? Yeah. But it was hard going from a college because you don't have the blueprint, right? If your school is already recruiting from there, they have a blueprint, so they can give that blueprint.
And it's so tricky too, because I feel like a lot for tech companies, it's usually the computer science department, the engineering department. But this business department, right? It's a bit of a gap, right? So I saw the Microsoft, the Googles going to like, the NSBE, our NSBE chapter and talking to them, or going to the engineering school and talking to them. But it was like, coming over to the business school was like, well, what do we do, right? So it's actually interesting that you say that, right? If there's no kind of recruitment model in place for either your degree or just, where you are in school and where you are, there are other resources to kind of understand, okay, how do I break through into tech? So, yeah.
And it's seeing one thing, I think that's a good distinction, because you're right. Yeah. The engineering school did have people come in there, right? Yeah. But I was in the business school as well, right? So, and I did marketing and tech. So again, there was like it just wasn't as targeted. I found how to go out and get the resources. And I think you pointed out something that it might go over people's head a little bit, is how much you learn from the people you met at the conferences, of the sponsorship, the mentorship that you got from there. And I'm pretty sure that had to help you a little bit further along on your journey getting into Microsoft, right?
Yeah. So. I definitely kept every business card, every contact card. I was the person that followed up after I met you, gave it 48 hours, hi, we had a conversation. I was also the girl who stayed behind after a company would visit, to ask questions and to, understand, okay, what are some of the opportunities? What are some of the programs? What are just some of the near-term things that I can do, right? Can I do an innovation workshop? I know Accenture had this innovation workshop that they were hosting in DC. So just me sticking around afterwards and just, pondering on things. I was actually given an invitation for that. So, there's always opportunities to kind of bridge, where you are and where you would like to be. And I definitely felt like my network helped me a lot to get me here today. And not just from a, a career, near term, plan, but also just on the personal development, right? Like my soft skills, there were, coming up in college, there's some gaps sometimes. So it's like, okay, what are some ways that I can improve this? Or they'll offer me coaching in ways that I can improve in this way. So I've had too many people to name that have just, been so helpful to me over just finding my career, finding opportunities. And then, okay, maybe that one opportunity I didn't get that, or maybe that one interview loop I got to third round, didn't make it, right? I still kept those contacts, and I still kept talking to those people and using them to help me in areas where I needed that help. So, and it was always a reverse mentorship as well. It was like, they were my mentor, but then I also reverse mentored as well. I was like, okay, well, coming back to the HBCUs, here's how we can do the ambassadorship program, right? Like, I know one of the companies, I didn't make it to a certain round in the interviewing, but I said, hey, if you ever want to improve your recruitment model, or if you want to have ambassadors, here's a way that you can do it at the school. I've seen another company do it this way. So I was always rendering those recommendations and suggestions, and just keeping those line of communications open, which was important. I think even just now and later on in my career as well. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's fantastic. And one other thing I wanted to make a note of is you talked about, you didn't get the result you wanted, but instead of being frustrated, you used it as a time to also give back. So that makes you memorable. And that's something that could be kind of overmissed, because you're frustrated. You didn't get the job. You might, you're ready to hang off. You're like, hold on, you be a resource. And people don't forget that, because if they have another job in the future, they're going to reach out to you. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty.
On this recruiting timeline, you didn't get it, but maybe they'll come back in the spring and you get it again, so it's all subjective. I'll never forget. I got third round of a consulting firm that I was really hoping to land the job with my senior year. I got up to the third round, and actually had the interviewer, talk to me and say, hey, we loved you, you were great. We just only had 2 candidates that we could take, for this cycle. And sometimes, there's variables like that you can't control, right? And I remember sitting a little bit discouraged, because I'm like, well, I know I killed it in interviews. I know I did a great job. I know I had a good rapport even after the interviews, but I knew in that case, it was just more capacity and what, how many candidates they could have, per department or for the opportunity. But, I kept my encouragement alive. And that's why I really do help a lot of college seniors today, whether that's, if they're confused or if they're struggling in silence with what's next. I try to just be that unbiased listener, even though some people look at me like, oh, well, she's from tech, she's going to try to recruit me to tech. Nope. I'm just trying to, get you to understand that there are different paths that you can take, different routes, and that it's okay to have this exploratory phase, right? I felt so pressured by it. I felt like it was an accelerated thing. I need to find a job. I have to, but you learn a lot about yourself when you have to kind of sit and understand, okay, if I go this route with grad school, this is where that could take me. If I go this route with corporate, this is where this can take me, right? And I learned to enjoy the process instead of feeling like, oh man, this is like so stressful, like the uncertainty behind it. But looking back, I'm like, that was needed to kind of frame my purpose and frame, coming into tech, what are some of the things that I value, the things that I want to, contribute to in our larger community here at Microsoft. So,
and that's awesome, man. Even how we met, you went out and looked for a mentor. I did the same thing, right? So, because I wanted not only to get in, but you want to thrive once you get inside here. You want to go up the ranks. You want to become an M1, M2, executive, and so on and so forth. And that's how we met. And again, we just network from here, right? So again, that tenacity doesn't stop once you get in the door. It's just the beginning. You just going to continue doing that networking and leveraging your network. And also just being okay to be vulnerable, to ask for a mentor. It's tough sometimes, right? But, it definitely unblocks some of it. You taught me stuff that I didn't know, right? And, I've been in the game a little bit longer than you have, right? So just being able to have that willingness to learn, I think is essential. And that kind of goes right into our next question is, how do you plan to serve in the future and going forward?
Wow, I love this question. So definitely, I'm going to continue with that population of college seniors. I feel like they are a little bit overlooked, if you will. I know a lot of them, and I've talked to a lot of them over the past 2 years, because I just remember how I felt. And I'm like, I got to reach back in that community of folks. And it's crazy. I had a lot of people just reach out to me like, hey, Tatiana, I don't know what I want to do, so, and I was like, okay, let's quiet the noise. Let's get to it. So I feel like that's the way that I want to serve in the future. I don't know if that's, with career services or interview prep or resume services, but I would like to have just maybe a lot of different services where I can help college seniors just feel like they're supported in their transition to either it's a corporate job, graduate program, but like just a listening ear and a support network, and have other college seniors kind of join that and have cross dialogue and knowledge share, because I feel like a lot of us were kind of siloed and isolated in our thinking, and really everyone is thinking the same thing, right? As a college senior, like, what am I going to do next? So I want to bring more community around that. That's a way that I love to serve. Here in the Puget Sound, I do a lot of, I would say, like career fair informational kind of sessions. I did this one previously with Blacks at Microsoft and the Youth Force with the Boys and Girls Club. So that was like high school seniors, people who are like in high school still, just thinking about what they want to do when they go to college, or eventually just seeing themselves in tech. I do a lot of those type of speaking engagements and panel discussions. I've been told that I'm a really good public speaker, so I like to offer that help as well to others. So I actually hired 3 BPMs in our org this year. So going back to my journey to Microsoft and, just the HBCU to tech path, I was like, okay, I want to volunteer for interviewing. I want to be an interviewer this year. I remember going to my chief of staff and saying, hey, I don't know how to, get involved here, but this is like the first thing I said in one of our little like feedback connect conversations was like, in the going forward, I said, going forward, I would love to do just interviewing and recruiting. And this was on every connect that I put in the tool. So eventually at the end of the year, he's like, all right, Tatiana, let me bring you along for the interview process that we have for BPMs. And I was like, oh, thank you. I said, oh, wow. He's like, yeah, you put it on your connect a few times. And I, want to make sure I follow through. And I said, well, thank you so much. And that was actually an eye-opening experience, just to how the recruiting landscape works at Microsoft, through, different vendors, through internal practices, just how we interview. And I took a lot of that knowledge and those nuggets, and I help a lot of HBCU students who are pursuing careers in tech. Just a lot of different nuggets that I saw, just different interviewing best practices and techniques. I was able to kind of, firsthand see that as an interviewer, interviewing college students as well. And it was actually really fun. I did it for 3 interview days. They were all spread out across October, November time. So there were 3 kind of super days, if you will, that I participated in. It was a great experience. I was able to bring on 3 BPMs to our team this year. So it just feels good that I was a part of that process and someone's kind of, first view into Microsoft and asking those questions, answering those questions. So I plan to serve again, in my role capacity. So the BPM interviewing, but also I would love to help with just making more HBCU interviewing practices and best techniques is there as well. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I think it goes into the next question is, what's your passion? I think you kind of shared it already.
Yeah.
But would you shed some more light on that? What's your passion?
I would say, my passion is always evolving, but I would say today it's largely around this HBCU advocacy.
Okay.
There's just power in storytelling. There's power in community. And I really I have a lot of current HBCU students, alumni reach out to me and just ask me, how did you get into tech? And I feel like there's a need for our stories. So through HBCU advocacy, I plan to really insert my passion here and just see how I can make it fun, how I can make it, engaging and consumable, that folks can really learn about, what is this journey from HBCU to tech, and, what is it like on the other side, right? Now that I'm here, what am I learning? What am I, gaining? What am I gathering? And all the great people that I meet as well that are HBCU alum as well that are in tech, just kind of doing more storytelling there. So that's largely my passion. I would say also, as of recent, so I'm actually, my background's in sales at Microsoft, but as of recent, I am considering a near-term job pivot in marketing or advertising. So a lot of my passion is around just learning about marketing at Microsoft and learning about market research, marketing tools, and just figuring out how I can sort of bridge my creative skills and my analytical skills and really make the best next job, if you will, for myself. So I see my passions going there just with HBCU storytelling, and then also hopefully in a marketing role here at Microsoft. So
that's awesome. That's beautiful. That's great. I think that's your passion. I can really tell it because I can feel what you're saying. And I'm excited to see the content, the connections, and just how you evolve the community. And I'm here too. So, we can leverage this platform to give back. I want to be a part of that mission as well, because you inspired me to do some more too. So that's great. So, I know you're still really early in your career, but what would you have told yourself, since you left the Target and talked to high school seniors? What would you have told high school Tatiana that what you know now? How would that conversation go?
If I had to tell high schoolers anything right now, I would say be a sponge. That was told to me a lot when I was in college. And I think that's just a great way of putting things. Be a sponge, get exposure where you can, and seek those opportunities that can give you that exposure, right? Yeah. If you have to go through your typical, college admissions counselor, or you have to go through your counselor at high school, if you have to go through the career center, that was my window to kind of understand about this world that I didn't really know too much about. Because I came from a background of educators and lawyers. So business was just a brand new space. Corporate was a brand new space. So just if you want to learn more about something, I would say, really try to seek those, either programs or opportunities that can give you the exposure to that world. And then you can really just, like I said, leverage your network and, find people in those programs and opportunities that can really help you frame some of the visioning that you have for yourself. But I would say in high school, be a sponge, give yourself grace, give yourself time. I do feel like sometimes, at different phases of our journey, we feel like there's this pressure to have it all figured out. As going back on my story, coming from a STEM high school, then going to a non-STEM high school, then going to a HBCU, and then having a business degree, but then having that background from STEM my first 2 years of high school. So kind of piecing everything together, I would say take along your journey the nuggets that you get, or the glimpses that you get into what you think is something that you would love to do in the future. And I think that all kind of helps. Not only you learn about yourself in the process, but I think you also learn about, okay, this is where I think I can end up, right? As a first step, into this next phase of my journey. So that's the advice I would give high school students. I would also say, back to the Boys and Girls Club. That was another club that I was, had a speaking engagement with. There's just so many clubs and resources that you can tap into. And that also goes back to mentorship. If you're in high school, I know sometimes high schoolers don't really, see that as a window to open up for mentorship, but I think high school is such a pivotal time to acquire mentors. And, even if it's not from a career standpoint, just acquiring a mentor to kind of talk through and walk you through, what they're doing and where they are. And that's beyond just like bring your, I guess, parent or child to work day, but like beyond that, like having someone throughout the year, be that listening ear and spend that time with you to kind of walk you through, what they do and what you could possibly do. I think always having that external point of view is good as well. So
that's great.
That's what I would tell a high school student. If Tatiana was back in high school, I would tell her that for sure.
That's great. I think that's some good advice. And when you say network, if you don't know what that is and how to build that is, start with your family, right? And if your family doesn't have the network, start with your teachers. Yes. That's what I kind of did. I remember when I was in college, in high school, went to the Science Skills Center in Brooklyn, and it was a gentleman named Scafford who came. And he took us to a stock like competition. Had to pick stocks in a simulation, and we didn't have any training. Like I read a book on it, and then we just went there with other kids. Like they had training, and we still finished out of 20, like top 9, top 10. So without training, I'm like, yo, this is so fun, right? So then to this day, I'm still talking to him. Like that's still my mentor. Sometimes I teach him stuff now, but that was experience that changed my life forever because I knew business was going to be for me, right? And I do a lot of stuff on stocks from there. And other thing, if you're 19, you're 17, 18, you go on to college, don't be afraid to think big. Don't be afraid to take that next step. It might be hard, right? Because you got to break down that big idea into like a pizza, like slices, right? So you can digest it. But don't be afraid to think big because you got so much of your life that's ahead of you. And one thing is when you're trying something new, like how you said, to reach for some experience, some maybe internships, reach for something that you're going to have to struggle a little bit. You might fail, but you're going to learn, and not to lose enthusiasm, but get enjoyment out of learning, but learn to reflect and write down and record your failures. Recording and then moving forward with execution will get you forward, and it'll continue to help you continue to grow. Because even when you get into 10 years, like I'm into my career, I still know that Tatiana can teach me a multitude of things, right? Not only the CEO can teach me some new things, but the new hires can teach me some new things. And high school kids, because the way y'all look at technology and use technology is different from me now, right? Because you probably most of your life, you had technology. Yep. I remember for me, I had an old Walkman player and a record, and I'm only 33. And I remember when I got a CD and it was a skip, I had to put the rubber band on it so it wouldn't skip when I was on a train just to go, right? And most of my, you probably grew up with the iPod, so that for me, it's like, it's so different. Yeah. We talked about, like, hey, you going on Facebook? She's like, nah, it's on GroupMe, right? The way we consume information. Like when I talk to, I say kids, but younger adults, they are on Twitch. They on Discord groups. They're doing so many other things that I don't even do right now. So for me as a marketer, as a business person, a technologist, I can learn from you, so never lose that. So, one thing I like to leave is because sometimes if you don't have access to the human capital, you can still get some of that intellectual capital through like books or podcasts. So what's some of your favorite books or podcasts?
That's super powerful. Yes, I would say right now, And so I'm coming up on 2 years at Microsoft. I will say that September 2020 was when I started, and we're coming up on 2 years in 2022. So I'm really getting into the weeds of how to just best perform at my role. Optimal performance is where I'm trying to zone in on. So I would say the Handbook of Program Management by James T. Brown is one of my favorite books right now. I'm really in there just trying to learn more about, what does it mean really to be a BPM, right? I've had my fair share of trial and error first 2 years. And how can I really just be this optimal program manager, right? And how can I transfer those skills to other teams, other organizations, other industries, things of that sort. So that's a great book for anyone who's interested in learning more about program management or just wants to be a better program manager. Also tag on to say that the learning never stops. So I'm actually, there's a University of Washington program that I'm actually applying for. This is full transparency, and it's for the PGM certification. So I think that's through the PMI Project Management Institute, but it's called the PGM certification. So I will be in a classroom in a cohort with other people who are aspiring to be program managers as a program manager, and offer just my point of view coming from having 2 years of program management experience. So the learning never stops. I would also say podcasts, really a YouTube series, podcasts, LinkedIn Live. She kind of has it all going on. Sherlaender, Phillips, Modern.
Awesome.
I'm there every week. I think her videos are amazing. She just provides so many nuggets and gems and brings in a lot of seasoned professionals, experienced professionals to come in and give their best practices and advice as well. So just for someone who's early in career, that's been just a great series. I've really learned a lot from it. And a little bit about Sherlaender. She is a vice president for the US channel sales for Microsoft. So she has a lot of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge, amazing speaker. So great podcast, great LinkedIn Live series, and great YouTube series. I would say overall for my career planning, my career journal, and my career affirmations resources, I use Letitia Beard's. I use her resources. So happy to provide those links probably in the bio of this chat if anyone's interested. But that career journal has really helped me just ask those questions about, what is it that's, the next best job? I know I've said that a few times, next pivot, where I am today, just asking, double clicking on those questions of, what is it that I want, near term, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Her resources and affirmations has helped me a lot in my job today. I would say those are like my top 3 resources right now.
That's awesome.
But I'm always open to more. So Sly, you got to give me some of yours as well.
Oh, I definitely will. The one I'm reading right now is Atomic Habits. Because I realized we all made up of certain habits. I know it's very trivial, but today I'm literally writing down everything I'm doing today. And I'm finding so many areas where I'm on social media for no reason at all. Or I'm just taking why did I take 15 minutes and I wasn't even doing it? What was I doing with this time, right? So it's just little things on how I can optimize my day, because once you start getting progression through your life, right? And if you decide to have a family, that takes time. Then if you're a professional, that takes time. Right. Then you want to go to the gym, that takes time. You want to have a life outside of everything, that takes time. So your habits matter, right? Because if I want to get to the next stage of my career, I got to rechange these habits. And first is identifying what they are. Then I'm learning how to pair them with good habits I have so they can, unlearn the bad habits or relearn a new habit over the bad habit, right? So that's a good one. Another book I would share is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. That is a great book, again, because you might be a superstar in high school, right? Because I was really good in high school. But when I got to college, everyone was good, right? So, and now I was a rock star at my last job. Then I came to Microsoft. It's like I went from, I got drafted to the NBA now, right? And everyone was a superstar at their last job. How do you stand out? How you be part of the team? And it's going to show you, I remember I became a product marketer, a director of product marketing. And I kept treating it as I was a senior partner marketer, right? 2 different jobs, but I didn't change the way I prepared for that job. And ultimately I ended up leaving because I didn't adjust fast enough, right? And that was fine. And I also found that job wasn't what I want to do. But again, I kept resting on what got me there instead of pivoting and understanding what needed to get me to the next place I wanted to go, right? So then you just learn and you pivot. So those are two things I would talk about. YouTube, I'm YouTubing every day. Anything I got a question on, I'm reading it up, I'm learning. I got Audible. I probably listen to over like 100 books a year. So it's and I take notes. I go through it. I'm curious. I don't say that to brag or anything. It's just that I like to consume information. But again, that becomes bad, right? Because I found if I could find someone like Tatiana who has experience in a particular area, that's like 5 books right there that I could go get from you. Instead of me having to read those 5 books, you like, Sly, I read those 5 books. You only need to read 2 of those books because
and
half
the
those
application after the book is what's
correct.
Yeah,
so application, right? So I find like I'm curious. I like to learn. Something else that people don't call out is take a personality test. Not a personality test, a strength test. Strength Finders 2.0, Clifton Strengths. It will.
I did the Gallup Strengths assessment just recently. Yeah.
Yep, the Gallup one.
I think doing all of them. I know there's the MBTI. There's the 16 personalities. I always recommend doing all of them and just seeing, get a report. I would say do them on a quarterly basis, or could
you change, right? Because your personality would change. Certain things I got, it wasn't the same on it. And then again, just get to know yourself a little bit more. I think the more self-reflection that you do, you'll find out what you want and you don't want to do in life. Because everyone don't want to be the CEO, and that's cool, right? You know, I got people who want to be principal engineers. Right. And they don't want to go into management. I mean, that's fantastic because they still make a lot of money and they're still happy, but they knew early on they didn't want that responsibility. Yeah. I know for myself, I made it known that I want to be in management, or, I have entrepreneurial aspirations because I own companies, I own businesses, right? Yeah. So that's something I always wanted to do, right? But I don't push that on. I think just knowing who yourself is and your work strategy. And I knew I needed a job that I didn't have to clock in every day because I'm not the person who is, I need some creative flexibility.
From 9 to 5.
But I can't, every job I had that, I hated it. Like my job now, I can pick the times that I can work. You can work as much as you want, as how little as you want. You can figure it out. I like the autonomy. So you got to figure out your personality. What job's going to give you that? If you go into tech support, well, you ain't going to get that, especially if you're in a call center, because everything is timed, right? So just got to know yourself a little bit more. So that's why I leave there. But this has been a phenomenal conversation. Tatiana, I could talk to you for 2 more hours, but we got to cut this short right now, and we'll do a part 2 because I already know you're going to do some phenomenal things in your career. So before we do leave, how can the audience contact you?
Yeah, so anyone in the audience watching, you can find me, Tatiana Streeter, on LinkedIn. Feel free to IM me, introducing yourself. I'm always pretty responsive on LinkedIn, so always responding to people who IM me and just want to chat. So if you have any questions about HBCU to tech, what I'm doing now, you can share with me what you're doing now. Always open to engage. But thank you so much, Sly. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on the show, Tatiana. Sly Gittins and Tatiana Streeter are out. Peace.
Peace.